Hello, everyone. I am Queen T, also known as Priestess Ifapomile Omowari Ogunyomi. You got to say the whole thing. It's like a Tribe Called Quest. And I am the Practical Priestess. Today, we are talking about voting rights and laws, and also some of the voting rights of felons based on states, just so we can get a little clarification about what y'all can and can't do and what y'all need to prepare for in the next week, okay? Because we only got about a week. So, my wonderful co host and amazing just individual.
Well, thank you. Hey, y'all. It's me, Brandy A. McPherson. The cool kids call me BAM because everybody loves a short acronym. Everybody loves a nickname, right? And I am the community priestess, known by some as Priestess Ajay Aife. And hey, I'm excited to talk to you today to make sure you know what your voting rights are.
Okay, so we're going to hop into this. So, I'm going to kind of cite a few things just so that people understand some of the amendments to our actual constitution, understand what they are briefly. Okay, this is a brief summary. I encourage everyone who's watching this to go and do further research. Okay, but this is going to be a quicker video just because this type requires you to go do your own stuff. Okay, we are not going to give a whole breakdown in this particular one because of time. We're not going to break down the 19th Amendment for you. You have to do that yourself. Okay, so let's start with the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment gave African American men the right to vote in 1870, but many weren't able to exercise this right. Some states used literacy tests and other barriers to make it harder to vote. Okay, so 15th Amendment gave African American men, just the men, the right to vote. That was in 1870. The 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. This gave American women the right to vote. So, African American men had the right to vote in 1870, but women of any race still could not vote until 1920. Okay. The 24th Amendment was ratified in 1964. This eliminated poll taxes. The tax had been used in some states to keep African Americans from voting in federal elections. So, as a brief, in the description of this video, I'm going to have a link to a video that I saw on IG because it uh, it blew my mind a little bit. So I already knew there was poll taxes, okay? But there were actually there was a black woman who kind of spearheaded this amendment coming into play because she complained because when she went to go vote, they charged, again, at the time in the 60s, it was something like a total of like $6 or something like that for her to vote. Now, this was a woman who made $913 for the entire year. And so having to pay $6 to vote is too much. It's too much money. Okay? $6 don't seem like a lot to us, but we would all be very upset if when we went to go vote, we had to pay $6. Like we would all be very upset. So imagine that in the 60s, and only because of where you lived and because you were black. Okay? So, 24th Amendment got rid of poll taxes. The 26th Amendment, ratified in 1971, lowered the voting age for all elections to 18. Okay? And then the Civil Rights Acts created some of the earliest federal protections against discrimination in voting. So remember, we talked about this in a previous episode where sometimes the federal government has to step in because the states ain't shit. Okay? So this is one of those cases. These Civil Rights Acts had to be created at a federal level because the states played too much and they were discriminating against people. Also, that's why the 24th Amendment was done in the first place, because certain states, certain areas, they were taxing people just to discourage them from voting. So the federal government had to step in and make an amendment so that it would be illegal. So sometimes big government works. Okay. So the Civil Rights Act created in some of the earliest federal protections against discrimination in voting. These protections were first outlined by the Civil Rights Act of 1870, but were later amended. Okay, so there is a Civil Rights Act of 1957. There's a Civil Rights Act of 1960. There's a Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, they all had to make changes to certain things because as we started trying to really get out from slavery and Jim Crow, there were things that had to be plainly put so that we could progress in the right direction. So, again, the Civil Rights Act of 1870 was first. However, there's one in 1957, 1960, 1964. Okay. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. This prohibited voter discrimination based on race, color, or membership in a language minority group. So, if you don't know about this, after the Second World War, we had a lot of immigrants coming from other countries. Well, during it as well. So, this required certain places to provide election materials in language besides English because we had a huge Asian population at this point from various countries in Asia. There are a lot of countries in Asia. It's not just the ones we always talk about like China and Korea and Japan. There are a lot of other places, and a lot of them were going through wars at this time, especially because of the fallout from World War I and World War II. So everybody's fighting everybody at this point. So this just made sure that there were no language barriers in the way people were being told about the election process and how it worked. Okay. So this act also placed limits on certain states with a history of voter discrimination. These states had to get federal approval before passing voter restrictions. And then in 2013, the Supreme Court struck down this rule. So again, something else to look at to see why in 2013, they decided to reverse that decision. And that goes back to our last conversation about the different branches of government and how they do get to do that sometimes. And that would be the judicial branch of the government. So the Voting Accessibility for the Elderly and Handicapped Act of 1984 required polling places to be accessible to people with disabilities, because that's not something that we think about. We're very ableist in this country. And so not thinking about the fact that people who have a hard time walking or in wheelchairs can't even get into the polling place to vote. And that would discourage them from voting because they can't even get in. It's not even something that we think about. So in 1984, they literally had to create something that prevented that type of discrimination. The Uninformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act of 1986 and the Military and Overseas Voting Empowerment Act of 2009 improved access to voting for military voters and voters living outside of the U.S. So we have thousands of people in our military, and they should absolutely have the right to vote and have the ability to do that. However, it was not expressly made available to them. So they had to create laws that kept it from, especially military. If anybody should be able to vote, it's our military. They had to go back through and create laws that allow them to vote in a way that makes sense. So that's a thing. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 created new ways to register to vote. It also called for states to keep more accurate voter registration lists. So this is, as we're getting into technology and things like that, there's better ways for people to register. And the records need to be kept because we need to know that people are actually registering, and that the right people are voting, and that people aren't voting fraudulently and, kind of swaying elections by committing voter fraud. The Help Americans Vote Act of 2002 authorized the federal funding of elections. It also created the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, which is the EAC. The EAC helps states comply with HAV, which is Help America Vote Act, to adopt minimum standards on voter education, registration, and ballots. So this just makes sure that the process goes as smoothly as it can. And so it put a little bit of federal money into assuring that our elections are run properly. Because again, sometimes states ain't shit and they need a little help. So your state's voter ID laws determine whether you need to show an ID, and if so, what kind. So whatever state you are in, if you are not used to voting, this is your first time voting, make sure that you look into your state's voter ID laws. Where I am, we have to provide like a driver's license or a passport, okay? Your state may require you to show a photo ID, like a driver's license, state ID, or a passport, or they may ask you to see another form of identification like your birth certificate or social security card. If you are a registered voter and have a voter registration card, you are not required to bring it with you when you vote, but you can still use it as a form of identification. So if you move, sometimes your ID will say your old address, but you'll get a new voter registration card that has your new address and your name on it. And that can be used. They also, in certain places, have a picture of your signature. So they can see what your signature is supposed to look like. So if when you go to sign your name and it doesn't look like that, they can be, hold up, wait a minute, what is this? Okay. So that's something to consider as well. This is why it's important to learn how to sign your name, learn cursive, learn how to sign your name, and then always sign it the same. I work for an attorney in my muggle life. Okay. I work at a law office, and the amount of people who do not sign documents properly is astronomical. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. And it makes me angry. Okay. When you're putting things on legal documents, your name, it has to be correct. My name is actually wrong on my birth certificate, but I have not got it fixed. So when I write my name on legal documents, I have to have it the right way. It's not the way I want it, not the way my mama intended it. It's not the way I say my name. Those of you who know my real name, you know that I say my whole name. Again, it's like a Tribe Called Quest. It's not Eva Pomule, by the way, but it's just as difficult, and it's not in English. But when you are doing these type of documents, don't put your nickname on there. Don't put the short version of your name. If your name is Richard, don't put Dick. Your name is Richard. You put Richard on things, okay? If you are a junior or a senior, that's important that you put, or a third or a fourth or a 10th, whatever. It's important that you put that on there as a way to determine who and which of you is the one doing it, because it all needs to match. So make sure, especially on social security cards, birth certificates, if there is any, my mom can't get a passport. My mom can't get a passport because what her birth certificate says is different than what her social security card says. And the reason is wild as fuck. I ain't finna tell all our business. Some of y'all know. But the reason is crazy, okay? So we don't know why she was able to register for school, went to school, and graduated under a particular name that is not on her birth certificate. We don't know if her name was legally changed because we don't have the paperwork. But even her high school diploma is different than her birth certificate. And in the 80s, when she graduated, a high school diploma was actually a form of identification. And so it's messy. So again, pay attention to what your legal name is. Get your birth certificate. If you are grown and you don't have your own birth certificate and you still got your mama holding your birth certificate, grow the fuck up. Get your birth certificate. Get a copy of your social security card. Do not carry those two things with you. Put them in a safe place in your house. You put it under your fucking mattress. I don't care. Do that. Put it in your panty drawer. I don't care. Put it underneath your dresser. I have a box of important documents. Our birth certificates and socials, card things, all the important like legal documents, my divorce paperwork is in the box. The kids know that that's the important box. The man knows that's the important box. He got stuff in the important box, okay? Put it somewhere in your house. Stop letting your mama carry your birth certificate. They are $20. Go get you one, okay? Go get your own birth certificate and get the long form. Don't get the regular one. The long form will tell you your time of birth, which, if you are in this life of all of spirituality, especially ATR, getting your birth chart done, things like that for astrology purposes, astronomy purposes, zodiac, all that stuff, you need to know the time you were born. So get your long form birth certificate, not the short one that just has like names and the place. Get the long form one. I don't think it's a difference in price, but it has the details like the doctor who delivered you, the MD who oversaw your delivery, the time. Again, your mother's complete name, the address at the time in which your mother had when you were born. If your dad's name is on there, because that's not my business if it's not, if it is or isn't. But if your father's name is on there, it will have your father's address as well sometimes, depending upon the state. So this is all important information for you to know who you are in general. Get your birth certificate. Okay, thank you. Moving on. I know that was a tangent, but do it. Some states may ask you to sign a form affirming your identity and what information. There's ways for you to find out if that's the case. Like I said, in my case, I have to sign my name. I show them my ID. They find me in the book. I sign my name. They verify that my signature looks the same, and then they hand me my ID back. Even with the right ID, I'm sorry. Some states will let you cast a provisional ballot. Okay, so states use provisional ballots when there is a question about a voter's eligibility. They keep your provisional ballot separate until they investigate your eligibility. You may have to return to show an acceptable form of ID within a few days, or the ballot will not count. So if you have an issue of ID, vote early. That way, all these situations can be remedied before election day, or fix that shit. Okay, just go get you an ID. Okay, just do it. Whatever your state requires. If your state will let you do it with your birth certificate and your social, get those. Please. Please. Thank you. I know we're running late, but do it. Even with the right ID, you may have to cast a provisional ballot. This can happen if the name or address on your ID doesn't match the name or address on your voter registration. For instance, if you get married, if you change your last name, and update your voter registration, but your driver's license, which you present as ID, still has your unmarried name on it. Again, get that taken care of. If you move and for your voter ID, you present a current utility bill, but you forgot to update the address on your voter registration and the two addresses do not match. Okay, so that's another thing. There are, like in Ohio, they will let you use a utility bill as well. So again, learn what your state needs. Some states require that you notify your local registration office of any name change. Avoid problems, okay? Learn how to update your voter registration when you move or change your name. We still have a few days. I'm pretty sure in almost every state you can still update your information if it's currently incorrect. Do it now, okay? Before we move on to the next section, Priestess, would you like to add anything?
Just for one, ouch, okay? Because my mama definitely still got my birth certificate, okay? I recently looked, and the other day I just told her, I said, I'm gonna get my birth certificate and put it in my important papers folder, okay? And she was like, okay. But even when I got my passport like last year, I got my birth certificate from her. And we were talking a little whiles later when I finally got it back, and she was like, "So you're gonna bring back your birth certificate?" Like she was checking for it. And I'm good in 25. We just don't say 25. Anyway, that when you went through the actual timeline of the voting laws, specifically the civil rights laws, it just made me so proud for the opportunity to be able to go and vote. Like that means if the first civil rights, voting law or amendment would happen in 1870, that means from the moment we became legally freed in 1865, somebody saw the need for that to be a conversation. There was some ancestor that said, all right, they done gave me a little bit, I'm gonna take some more. I deserve to be able to vote. And folks have been fighting for that up until now, because we're still talking about things, but you can give them a solid 100 years. You said that the last, or maybe not the last, but there was a civil rights amendment in 1967. So that's a smooth, good almost 100 years, what, 97 years worth of fighting on behalf of Black, brown people to be able to vote in this country. And so it just makes me proud that $6 poll tax that we know that was rent. Like you said, if you do 900 some dollars divided by 12, I mean, monthly $6 is substantial. But it was people out there that paid it. It was people out there that got their coins together to be able to cast a vote, even knowing like that was a true sacrifice. So it made me proud. It made me say, I'm going to cast my vote. I'm going to venerate my ancestors when I do it, and my voice is going to be heard. And then just for anybody that is listening in North Carolina, so I'm in North Carolina. So same, we do have to show photo identification to be able to vote. So know that you can actually get a voter registration card same day. And pretty much, I mean, I stay in a really rural, small town, and you can get it same day. So, like Priestess said, there's still time. If you don't have these, if your ducks aren't in a row, it's still time to go ahead and get that. Here, you can do that provisional ballot as well if you don't have your ID, but it specifically lets you know that the vote is not cast until everything is confirmed. So just go get the ID, have your ducks in a row when you go so that you can go ahead and vote. But in North Carolina, you are going to have photo ID as well.
And in Ohio, they did a thing now where you can't get your ID the same day anymore. They used to make them right there. They mail them out now, and it takes about a week. So get done. They will give you a paper in lieu of the physical one. I don't know if Ohio will let you vote with that paper. So again, that's something that you got to look into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm gonna put this little thing on the bottom, okay? Because I'm about to get to quoting again. Okay. Um so let's talk about the restoration of voting rights for felons, because it's a similar but unrelated thing, because many people think that just because you're a felon you absolutely cannot vote, and so they don't even try. And that's actually not the case in 90% of cases. Okay, so we're gonna go through this. So um it's been commonplace. I'm basically reading this website. It's been commonplace practice in the United States to make felons ineligible to vote, in some cases permanently. Over the last few decades, the general trend has been toward reinstating the right to vote at some point, although that is a state by state policy choice. Currently, state approaches to felon disenfranchisement vary tremendously. NCSL has divided states into 4 categories as detailed in the table. And I'm going to see if it'll let me put the table on here. If not, I'll just have to tell you what it says. But in summary, there's 23 states where felons lose their voting rights only while incarcerated and receive automatic restoration upon release. Okay. There are 15 states where felons lose their voting rights during incarceration and for a period of time after, typically while on parole or on probation. Voting rights are automatically restored after this time period. Former felons may also have to pay any outstanding fines, fees, or restitution before their rights are restored. Note that in Maryland, convictions for buying or selling votes can only be restored through a pardon. In 10 states, felons lose their voting rights indefinitely for some crimes or require a governor's pardon for voting rights to be restored, face an additional waiting period after completion of sentence, including parole and probation, or require additional action before voting rights can be restored. These states are listed in the category, which I'm going to go over briefly. Okay. And I don't know that it'll let me share. Let's see. Can I share my screen? Can I share it? Maybe. Oh, wait. There's a share screen? Present. I've never done it on here. That's crazy. Oh, that's slides. I don't want to do the slides. So, felon voting rights. This is what we're going to share. Okay. So I'm going to make this bigger. And do you see it, Priestess? Oh,
I do now.
There we go. There we go.
Cool.
Okay. So this is straight from the website, all right? So never lose right to vote. DC, Maine, and Vermont. Okay? Lost only while incarcerated. Automatic restoration after release. This is most of them, okay? California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Utah, and Washington. Okay? If you live in one of those states and you are a felon, as soon as you are released, you can vote. Okay? You don't even need to do nothing. Just go vote. These states is lost until completion of a sentence, parole, and or probation, sometimes fines, fees, restitution, but then restored after. So if you live in these states, make sure that you follow the process so that you can be able to vote. That's Alaska, Arkansas, or Arkansas, as I like to call it, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, where Priestess is from, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Okay, so make sure that if you are a felon, you check to make sure everything's in a row so that your rights have been restored after you are done with parole or whatever it is. Now, these states, these are the ones where you need to see what is required for you to be able to vote. It may not be a definite no. In some cases it might be, but you just need to go through and check to see what is available to you based on the crime that you committed and where you were. So Alabama, Arizona, Delaware, Florida, of course, Iowa, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia, and Wyoming. Now, there are some similarities in where these states are located and what they allow. That is not by accident, okay? That's not accidental. Please don't think that it is. They do that for a reason. So, again, the website is scrolling at the bottom so that you can look at that more in detail, okay? But if you're a felon, it doesn't mean that you cannot vote. You just need to know what the law is in your state. Priestess, do you have anything there?
Thank you for bringing it up and thank you for clarifying it. Because I do think that it's a lot of confusion, which is why some people, like you said, are hesitant to even look into it. Do I vote? Do I not? And it's important because knowing how you're affected obviously is always a priority. I can remember a situation here, and this isn't to deter anybody, but this is more so just to emphasize why it's important to know. Like we said, I'm in North Carolina, so once your sentence is fully completed, you are eligible to vote, but that includes like those fines. Like you're not really off probation until you pay your probationary fines. Like people forget that sometimes. So there was a situation where a young lady thought she was able to vote. I mean, there's conversation about what she thought and what she didn't, but she thought she was able to vote. She was still on probation or parole. And so the DA actually, because it was an election year and people were kind of pressuring the DA took the time to file charges against this person for illegally or attempting to illegally vote or casting an illegal vote or something like that, which was absurd. And there were so many different grassroots projects around here that took up for the young lady and was, helping her throughout the situation because it appeared to be an honest mistake almost. But again, politics, that's actually what we're talking about. Politics, it was an election year and it got kind of messy. And so that's why it's important just to know where you stand, what you can do. Don't let nobody, tell you for yourself. Tell you need to know for yourself. And like you said, you already talked about it in North Carolina, you can vote once you have completed everything successfully. So do not be deterred.
And I know we talked about this. I had a job where it was a second chance employer. And so we had plenty of things, as long as it wasn't anything of a sexual nature, as far as abuse, then you were still hireable. So we had people who unalive people work there. And they were like super nice people too. Like it was literally one of my favorite people and she unalived somebody. She didn't like expressly say what happened, but she wasn't that sorry given the situation. I However, but she was like a super nice person, really good worker and everything. And so we talked about the rehabilitation of people who need it. And we're going to talk about a little bit more in this anti-slavery law session that we're about to have. Because rehabilitation is important, and allowing people that have served their sentence to be part of the process again is crucial to their development and being able to come back into the society and being productive members of society. Because how can you get them to care about what's going on when you don't allow them to vote and when they can't?
And the spirituality of it too. I was like, we in spirituality, we're talking about redemption and forgiveness all the time, but it's like, let's put action, practice what we preach. And that's allowing these folks to really reintegrate if they've already served their time. Like, that's forgiveness, that's redemption.
Right. And they're not supposed to continue to serve a sentence after you've already served a sentence.
Yeah.
That defeats the purpose. Like, you could have left them outside for that. And we'll have to have a whole conversation about the prison industrial complex of America, but that's a whole nother thing, child. So thank y'all for watching. Make sure you comment, like, share, all the things. Especially share this if you know someone who's had legal issues in the past and who is, has to be a felon for whatever reason, so that they know, what they can and cannot do, and encourage them to be part of the process again. Encourage them to get these things done so that they can be part of the process if they aren't already, because it does matter. And there's a lot of issues that actually directly would have affected them, like these judges. If they had been voting for certain judges, maybe they wouldn't be, especially if they were wrongfully imprisoned. That's a big thing. So again, it goes back to voting across the whole dang on ballot. Okay. We'll talk about that next too. So love y'all, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.